You should be furious about Paper Mario. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is often celebrated as being the greatest Paper Mario game and one of the best ever RPGs ever, full stop. So recently in the online space, an awful lot of people have been talking about Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, mainly for two reasons. Firstly, how bloody brilliant the Switch version of the game is, and secondly, the controversial dialogue changes which have divided the fandom. However, regardless of how you feel about it, there is a reason why every American should be furious about this game. It's quite frankly had me scratching my head with regards to how something like this could even happen, and I don't understand why I haven't seen anyone else talking about this, as it's happening right in front of everyone's faces. So, what am I talking about? Well, the ludicrous pricing of the game, but not for the reason you might think. I made a video recently covering the dialogue changes and how different websites reported on them drastically differently from each other depending on their political leanings. However, some of the comments really stuck out to me because I noticed dozens and dozens of people complaining that $60 was way too steep for a remake of a 20-year-old game. So yes, again, I agree. I feel that $60 is a bit much, considering that much less work would have gone into creating the port of that game from the GameCube over to the Switch than you would have on a brand new AAA title. But I must stress that in itself is not the reason why I think people should be furious at the price. Let's be fair though, Nintendo have put far less effort into re-releasing games in the past, including the entirety of the Wii U library, which was re-released on the Switch, and people were more than happy to pay full whack for those games, and that's like PS3 and 360 era games. So yeah, I completely agree, that is completely and utterly taking the piss, but it's nothing new, and there are so many people that are happy to pay for it. The price problem with The Thousand Year Door is far more egregious, and if I was an American, I would be absolutely spitting nails about this. So here is the big issue that I need to highlight to you, and that is that the price for Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door in the US is completely different to everywhere else that I've looked into. And I'm not just saying like a little bit more expensive, I'm saying astronomically more expensive. Not just a little bit, but hugely, hugely more expensive. When I saw that people in my comment section were highlighting that the game was $60, I cringed a little bit, because generally speaking, if a game is for sale in America at $60, you can normally expect it to be being sold in the UK for £60. That's generally how it's always been. They seem to use the same numeric for the US and the UK. And that's something that I have talked briefly about a little bit in the past on this channel. So at the moment, £60 is translating as $76, which does sound horrendous, because it is, but there is a reason for that. Our price of £60 includes 20% VAT, which obviously the American price at $60 does not. So yes, we are paying more, but that is literally because the British taxman is taking significantly more than the American taxman is. So just to put it into a little bit of context, if you live in California, you're going to be paying $60 for the base game, and then another $6 on top of that, just under, for your tax. Whereas over here in the UK, we're going to be paying an additional $10 on that, simply because our VAT is at 20% instead. Here's the twist though, because fortunately for me, I was wrong in this case, and my assumption was wrong in a bizarre turn of events, because the price here was actually significantly cheaper than the price in the US. When I say significantly, I do mean significantly. Drum roll please.
No.
So I got Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door for 40 quid. Okay, so 40 quid, that's including the 20% VAT. So remove the VAT, that is £32 or $40.
That's mental. Come off it.
So taking tax out of the equation, US citizens are paying 50% more than British citizens are for the exact same product. This made me think, like, is this just something between Britain and America, or is there more to this? So my Patreon backers and people within my Discord server have been helping me do a little bit of research by checking various different websites and shops and so on and so forth across the globe, or at least within countries that we ourselves can access. We've been having a good old look into all of this, and we have found quite a few price discrepancies from country to country. So my Patreon backers and Discord server members have helped me to verify that within the confines of Europe, the price seems to be more or less level pegging with Britain, with increases and decreases seeming to mostly depend on how much VAT the country pays locally. But this isn't all that I've noticed, because apart from Americans being charged an insane amount for this game in comparison to their European counterparts, the price that the game is being sold for in Japan makes even Europeans look like they are being ripped off. So when I switched my Amazon account to show listings from Japan instead, I found the Japanese language release of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, and that was for sale for 5,382 yen, which is £27 or $35. Now, just like in Europe, they include the sales tax within the price of the game. So the price of VAT in Japan comes in at 10%. So just to make that clear, Japanese consumers, if you take away the 10% VAT that they are being charged on the product, they are getting Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door for $31.50, which American consumers are paying $60 for. Like, that is insane. So all of the prices that I've looked at so far have been for the physical release of the game, and you might be sitting there thinking, come on, I'm savvy, there's definitely a way that I can pay the European price for that game over the US price. Did I hear someone say VPN? No, this isn't a sponsorship, don't worry. Anyway, a VPN would be utterly useless in this scenario anyway. What do I mean by that? To make this plan utterly foolproof for Nintendo, in Britain at the moment, if you want to pay for a digital download copy of this game, then you're looking at paying £50. So 63 US dollars for the digital version of the game. That's £10 more expensive than the physical copy in the shop. So if you're a European or a non-US citizen, then you're better off buying the physical version of the game and not the digital version, because with the digital version you're being conned just like the Americans. So you might be wondering whether this is just a case of European games being cheaper across the board than their American counterparts. And I have had several people try to say to me that the increase in price in America must be down to inflation. But if that was the case, then surely that same trend would apply to other games as well. So I highlighted on here recently that I found Stellar Blade for sale in a shop at £70, which is the equivalent of 88 US dollars. And I'm not going to go into all of the ins and outs of that again. If you want to take a look back at my previous video, then it's still there. But yeah, basically I found it utterly preposterous that we were paying so much more than our American counterparts for that game. But when you look at it, that's a AAA brand new game. Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door is a re-release of a GameCube game. I was a little bit shocked because I hadn't realised how much the cost of games had gone up recently. Paying a premium in the UK was nothing new. That's always been the case, generally speaking, but it's only been a few weeks and I'm shocked and horrified on behalf of US citizens. It's left me with a few questions like, why has no one else noticed this, and why is no one else covering this, and what on earth is going on here? I'd also like to know where all of this extra money is going in the supply chain. Like, is it going directly to Nintendo, or is it going in the pockets of the American retail corporations? So whenever I normally bring up the topic of disposable income, I normally get a lot of comments from people who are American citizens, and they're often explaining to me that they're having a really, really tough time at the moment, and I'm not saying that you're not, but whenever I research this online, when you look at the amount of disposable income that the average US citizen has, and then compare it to the amount of disposable income that a European citizen has, then even though everyone is generally worse off, American citizens are less worse off, statistically speaking, than their European counterparts. So the reason that I was bringing that up is because I was wondering whether the astronomically higher price in the US was because Nintendo was considering that American citizens might have more money to spend than their European counterparts. So my question to you is, what do you think the reason is for the price hike on just this particular game? Because to my knowledge, this isn't really how prices usually work. I think that no matter where you live in the world though, most of us can be in agreement that prices for games are getting more and more expensive. This is why a website that sells us games for up to 90% cheaper than on consoles and on Steam is a necessity for gracious living. In the current financial climate, bargains are more important than they've ever been. So because so many of you have been taking advantage of this fantastic service and bagging loads and loads of games on the cheap, Instant Gaming have decided to sponsor me again for the 3rd month in a row, so I literally cannot thank you enough for everything. Thank you. Every single purchase that has been made has been directly supporting me as a creator, and I cannot express to you how grateful I am for that. So yeah, you might not be able to get Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door in America for cheap, but I can guarantee you will find loads of AAA bargains over on Instant Gaming. So use my link in the pinned comments and in the description and find yourself a plethora of lovely games for absolute pennies. I hope you have a lovely time shopping there and getting yourself some nice little cheap games. Thank you very much, and I shall see you next time.